welcome everyone to the March talk of our Alumni Speaker Series. I'm Annie Puffett. I am the Director of Career Development here at Upper Iowa University, and I am located on the Fayette campus. And tonight we are joined by Mark Griffith. He is a 2015 alum in our Emergency and Disaster Management program, as well as a 2017 alum of our MPA program, both done online. So welcome, Mark. He currently resides in Owatonna, Minnesota. And right now, I think I'm going to turn it over to President Duffy for just a couple of quick remarks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Annie. I really want to, again, thank you, Annie, for getting this thing moving. And this has been great. Unfortunately, I haven't made all of them. But when I do, I do like to talk with our guests here. And it's great to have Mark here. And like you said, here he is, a UIU alum, and really appreciate that our alumni are stepping up and getting involved in these programs. And I believe our students, if they're watching this, and ask questions, because we have alumni in every field, and these are some opportunities to link up with these alums. At the same time, you can have the opportunity to talk to them afterwards. And we have alums that do want to help out our students, especially those that are interested in their profession. So a big thanks to Mark, and again, to all of you that are joining this. If you don't ask the questions now and you want to hold off, or you think of something later, hey, send them in to Annie, and we can connect you. So thanks so much, very much, to all the participants right now.
Thank you, Dr. Duffy. Mark, let's just go ahead and get started. I know there are several things that you want to talk about tonight. So first, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, absolutely, Annie. And again, thank you, Annie, and thank you, Dr. Duffy, for the opportunity. This is just super exciting. So my name is Mark Griffith. As you heard, I did do the online program. I received my bachelor's in emergency and disaster management in 2015. And I received my master's in public administration and the emphasis in nonprofit organizational management in 2017. So I am married to my beautiful wife, Kim. We have between us, we have 4 children, 2 adults and 2 not quite adults yet. I've been an EMT since 2003, and before that, I worked in accounting quite a bit. I got into EMS. I was the town that I was working in was looking for volunteers, and they were willing to pay for it. And I thought, well, what a great way to get out of work and go take ambulance calls some afternoons. And I suppose the joke's been on me now for 18 years, so that's awesome. So, so that's kind of who I am.
That's a wonderful way to get out of work and then make it become your work after all these years.
Absolutely. It's never felt like a job. It really has.
There you go. Can you give us a brief overview of your organization and who you guys serve in your area? Absolutely.
So in Minnesota, the state is divided into 8 emergency medical service regions. So I'm the director for the South Central region, and that's kind of centered on in the 9 counties kind of around Mankato, Minnesota. All told, in those counties, we are tasked with serving anybody that would potentially first respond to a call for help. So as it currently sits, we've got about 30 ambulance services in those 9 counties. We have just north of 40, I think 41 first response agencies, and that would include your fire departments. And then on top of that, we work with law enforcement. So, and it's really our job, officially we do a lot of their continuing education. We assist them in their medical direction, and we provide debriefing services, critical incident stress debriefings, or we have a team that can help folks kind of piece together, their thoughts after a traumatic call. We also do quite a bit of firefighter rehab, which is supporting our rural volunteers. And in a nutshell, I think our goal, our mission is to make it as easy and as safe as possible for people to go out and do emergency response.
Wonderful. I know that tonight you're going to kind of be talking about the silver lining of COVID in the EMS profession in your area. So when you think back to the start of the pandemic a year ago, can you take us inside some of your initial thoughts that you had, that your organization had? Just kind of walk us through what some of those were.
Oh, sure. As difficult as it is to admit, I think myself and those that I worked with and worked for, we were in disbelief. This COVID kind of or COVID-19 really kind of hit the world stage at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020, and really up until about the end of February. I don't know that it had really sunk into anybody in our organization, and even in the neighboring my neighbors to north, east, and west. It was certainly an unknown, but and we had it on our radar. But certainly it would never be anything that would shut life down for a year, right? So at the end of March, at the end of February, I think we had just under, I think it was right at like 24, 25 cases in the entire U.S. So, that kind of fed our disbelief a little bit. Oh, this isn't necessarily so bad. And I'll never forget March 6th. I was at a conference in Minneapolis, and they had the first confirmed case of coronavirus in the state of Minnesota that day. And the next 8 days was a whirl. By the time between March 6th and March 15th, the World Health Organization declared it a pandemic, and on the 15th, we were officially into a community spread situation where this virus was spreading like wildfire through our communities here in Minnesota. And by the 16th of March, we were at a work at home order, and our bars and our restaurants were closing down, and we had our first COVID death within the state shortly after that. And, we were trying to make sense of this. Going back to our rural providers, and in the region that I am a part of, we have a lot of very rural providers. We have people that a cell phone, if they have a flip cell phone, that's an improvement for them. Smartphones were unheard of. It was tough to communicate with them. We actually maintain a fax line because that's the way some of those services still communicate with us. They send us requests via fax. So not only were we trying to wrap our heads around this, we were going to have to turn around and try to share what we're learning and get some minds together and get that information back out to these rural providers. So I'll never forget, it was by about March 20th, March 21st, it was literally like somebody was shooting information on a daily basis through a fire hose and expecting you to swallow it. We're really having troubles keeping up.
Yeah, it's been like that everywhere, I imagine. Yes.
Oh, sure.
You talk about the challenges, in rural EMS and EMS in general. What were some of those challenges that you faced initially within your area?
Well, some of our big challenges as the pandemic took off, and then as we started to go into a lockdown, where we couldn't just get in the car and go see a lot of these folks, is we had that communication, that increasingly difficult communication. We are getting we're getting requests for what types of personal protective equipment these people need to be wearing, and how do they handle patients, and if we get a call for somebody that's having a heart attack, can everybody that would normally respond to that call go to that call? And we had to, we were scrambling to get some answers. Initially these services, if we couldn't get them an answer, or if they didn't ask and they kind of took it upon themselves, they were responding in their turnout gear. They were, they had these expensive positive pressure suits that are, they're not very, these suits are, a couple $100-$300 a piece at minimum. And you can use them once, and they're using these to go on calls. And we really figured out pretty quickly that we would have to find a way to get this thing out here, or get good information to them. At that point in the game too, it was a very fluid situation. Our medical director, the regional medical director, was taking his guidance from the Centers for Disease Control. And that guidance was changing sometimes on a daily basis, 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row. He would get this information, he would pass that along to our office, we would condense it, we would send it out to the services, and then we were trying to answer those questions as we sent out, what types of PPE they need to wear, how many people can go on a call, what are the risk factors? If somebody has a cough, is everybody now potentially exposed? And I'll never forget one of the initial guidances that came from CDC was, that masks were not necessarily a necessity if you were healthy. And then pretty quickly they figured out that, the science kind of showed that those masks actually did kind of limit the spread of infection. So we had to, turn around and backtrack on that. And really maybe the third big bucket, the big challenge that we had was just general misinformation. We were getting, people tend to fill the gaps in their information, or what they don't know that's out there. They'll fill it with something that makes sense to them, and that's completely natural. We can roll with that. Unfortunately, the government response, was a little disjointed, and we were getting some very mixed signals from our government, our government on, what this was, what it wasn't. And so we needed to find a rapid and a solid source of information to pass along, and trying to, just trying to keep people rowing in the same direction, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Why don't you, if you don't mind, I know in some of the stuff that we had kind of talked about before, are you able to address any of those? How did you handle the communication? How did you handle those 3 challenges that you had? I know you had kind of talked about the huddles that you guys would do and things like that. So are you able to talk a little bit about some of those things and how you guys handled those challenges?
Oh, absolutely. So, we really kind of sat down, myself and my staff kind of sat down and figured out, communication is definitely an issue. How do we communicate? And knowing that we have role providers, and we have, providers with different access, different levels of access to technology. So we knew that whatever we did, it had to be easy to access. It had to be easy for these folks to access. And if they could access it, it had to be super easy to use. We didn't want 2, 3, 4, 5-step verification to have people log into what we're trying to put out there. It had to provide for organized 2-way communication. So we could certainly have put out a video and sent a link out to YouTube, put a video up on YouTube or on our website, sent the link to it, and got the information out that way. But that's really talking at those providers. We needed to hear from them. What were their concerns? What were they seeing? What questions did they have? And above all, it had to be a secure setting. There was certainly, when you're dealing with emergency medical providers, there is a potential that you're going to be touching on some patient information, or information that you wouldn't necessarily want to make public. So one of the things that the region had, and I'm not sure if our crowd heard our conversation with Dr. Duffy earlier, was we had a Zoom account, and that seemed like our best first option to put out to put it out to our region. So it met our criteria, and we thought, well, let's move forward with it. So March 24th of last year, we held our first, what we called it, our EMS COVID huddle. And we brought together, it was our goal to bring together the folks that were driving the response. So certainly we had our regional EMS programs. This is my program and our neighboring programs to the east and west. We had made sure that we had representatives from our health systems. Mayo Clinic Health System is a primary provider in our region, but we also have a couple of others and that were heavily involved. We have healthcare coalition partners, where you're bringing to the table local public health. You're bringing epidemiology. You're bringing the State Department of Health. We wanted to make sure that it was our goal to make the huddle kind of a one-stop shop for an answer. We didn't want folks to come to the huddle and we would get back to them with an answer. And that certainly happened on occasion, but if we could get them an answer and we had it out in front of them, we wanted to make sure they could walk away and they felt pretty good about it. And I think for the most part, we were very successful with that. We got these drivers together. We thought, we could maybe we could bring some incentive. If there's anybody on that's watching this that's been in EMS or if you're in healthcare in general, CEUs are golden. And if we can get a medical director to give us to authorize us a continuing education credit for each of these meetings, that tended to bring people out. So we tried to make it worth their while. We wanted to keep it condensed to about an hour-long format, and we would give. Initially, we were giving. We would give a regional update. We would spread out to our neighbors, our partners, and we kind of worked our way towards the medical director. And ultimately, the medical director is that's where the buck stops. That medical director will sign off on any procedures you can or can't do, or the best what the current recommendations would allow. That's all got to come through the medical director. So it really provided us with an opportunity to put the people that were tasked to do this day in and day out, get that information and put it in front of the people that have other jobs and volunteer on the side. So then once we settled on that, we had just a tremendous response. I think the very first meeting we had upwards of 80 people, which for us was a Zoom record. That was pretty nifty. We thought, just kind of based on how fluid that situation was, that twice a week was appropriate to start with. So we would hold our meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that way we could capture folks going into the weekend. We would have volunteers that would be taking call from 6 p.m. on Friday night until 6 p.m. on Sunday night. We want to make sure we gave them the most current information we could pull together. Another nice feature with Zoom is that there were certainly people that wanted to attend that couldn't. And what we would do is we would record those sessions and put them up on our website. And we would also pull out questions that were answered during the session and put a frequently asked questions document on our website, which is still there. So that was tremendously helpful, where we were able to put out a consistent message based on the current set of guidelines that were being utilized nationally and even within the state through the Minnesota Department of Health. So that once we had that, we felt like we were really kind of in a good position to stay out ahead of the game. If things changed, or and again, that fire hose didn't let up for the first 3 months of this pandemic, we were able to get it out in pretty short order. So we got our communication piece taken care of pretty handily. And that was a nice lead in to the next two that were a bit more difficult. And really, we had to be a bit delicate with as far as addressing how to roll out some of these procedures, and then and certainly the misinformation that was still out there. EMS providers, full-time or part-time, they're all held to a standard. And on March 15th, if you were having difficulty breathing, I could walk up and I could assist you with breathing. I could put a bag valve mask on you and I could help with those breaths. On March 30th, that was a no-go because of COVID. So we had to teach our providers, that we had to let go of years of experience. So that huddle allowed us to communicate with airway pods, so we could enclose people that needed airway assistance. We can enclose them into a pod so we wouldn't spread those particles. The airborne particles wouldn't get out inside of an ambulance or contaminate people around them. So we spent a lot of time on Zoom again, and and certainly not. I'm not being endorsed or paid by Zoom by any stretch, and any of those secure settings or Teams or whatever we wanted to use. But we spent a lot of time on Zoom talking to these providers, walking them through how to do these procedures, talking to them on donning and putting on and taking off their personal protective equipment, and just spent a lot of time. I remember the last couple of weeks of March, we spent 2 weeks trying to undo what folks learned over the course of years, and we couldn't do it face to face. So, but it had to be done.
Mm-hmm.
A bit more of the, so we were able to keep that as an ongoing process. Misinformation piece that really kind of that kind of continued, and I think we tried to stay as apolitical as we possibly could with this. We didn't want to turn this into a political argument. But we had providers that are that we trust and that they're highly trained, but they had some very staunch thoughts on what COVID was and the response to it. And really, what we had to do is, we had to respect their opinions. What we didn't want was some open revolt where they felt disrespected or they didn't feel that their opinions mattered. We really had to respect their opinions, and these especially in rural settings, EMS providers are very influential in their communities. We really came to find out that I think they're, by and large, they're very leery of government. These are farming communities, these are rural settings, and when somebody that doesn't live in that town or in that community comes in and wants you to do something, they a lot of times they cast a little bit of a leery eye on it, and we understand that. And then there was and there still is these overarching conspiracies, that COVID is part of something bigger than what it is. So we had to promote change. We absolutely had to promote the safety of our providers and the safety of the people they served, while the entire time respecting their opinion. And I think we were able to do that. We gave them a forum to speak in a respectful manner. We just addressed it, that these were the guidelines. These are the current sets of guidelines. This is where the science is currently leading us. And for the most part, that was a very effective method. So, and with that, we could, once we kind of established that trust, we were able to move forward with this, educating these folks and promoting the safety, and that has stayed with us to even today. People are here in Minnesota, here in the last couple 3 weeks, they have started to loosen the restrictions. People are, it's been a very, very long winter. It's been the longest winter ever. And people are, people they want to get out, they want to socialize. Humans are social creatures by and large, and EMS providers are very social creatures. And when you make them have to not be social, that takes a little doing sometimes. So we've been able to to provide that education as this pandemic has kind of evolved. We can take our COVID huddles, we turn them back to one meeting a month starting in July. And then in November here in Minnesota, we started to run into a hospital space crisis where we were literally running out of hospital beds during a surge. So we went back to 2 meetings a week, and here about a month ago, we did dial that back once again back to once a month. So part of our mission too is on the continuing education piece, and that continuing education has traditionally been funded. We get funding through seatbelt fines here in the state of Minnesota. The 8 EMS regions they take the seatbelt fines they collect every month, the state, and they distribute those to the regions, and we use them for continuing ed and being able to provide low and no cost continuing education. And honestly, during COVID, when you restrict people's ability to travel, you don't see as many cars on the road. And you certainly don't see as many police officers writing tickets because they don't want to be exposed. So we did see we saw an absolute decline in that resource. But just because we saw the decline in the resource didn't mean we didn't need to try to come up with something to provide that was effective for them. That is absolutely a safety issue, especially after walking them through, the changes they would need to make to be safe. We wanted to make sure we could reinforce it. We could include them and get some hands-on with them. So we had to reformat what we were doing education-wise. We used to go out on their meeting nights, on ambulance meeting nights or fire department meeting nights, and spend an hour doing a lecture and maybe some skills. And again, through technology, we were able to take the lecture portion. We put that online. They could look at it. They could go through that. There's a little brief test. They could do that at their convenience. And then we would set up a Saturday and kind of plant a skill station in the middle of 4 or 5 responding agencies, and they could come to us. They'd make an appointment. We would limit the number of people per hour, and we wouldn't lecture. We would get them strictly hands-on, get them practice on these procedures, and just keep them we wanted to instill confidence and competence at the same time. And I think we've been very successful with that, if that makes sense.
I think it's great that you're able to do that a little bit differently, but still be able to provide those services. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like everything else. Change is hard. Change is very difficult, and this was difficult for these services as well. They're very in tune. You have ambulance services that were created, and I'm looking at Keister, Minnesota, which is on the Iowa border down just out of us here. Keister's ambulance was founded in 1964, and they have met the 3rd Monday of every month since 1960. And that had to change. And so that took a little doing, but we really wanted. We tried to impart that we were trying to give them value for their time. You're going to come here. We're going to give you hands-on. We're going to give you these skills. You can walk away, something tangible that you can take back when you respond to a call. And if Keister adjusted fairly well, they really did. And as we move into a post-COVID era, that format has been well received enough where I think we're probably going to stick with it. It's been effective. People feel we're being more respectful of their time. I think they're feeling. I think that's where the confidence part comes in. They're feeling very confident in what they're doing out there.
Good.
And that's absolutely our job to promote that.
Good. So I'm going to change gears here a little bit because we did have a question come through from our Facebook Live. So first, this individual And I just have to bring this up because Roxanne says, how fun for us to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of your first COVID EMS huddle held on 3/24 of last year. And so we are celebrating the year anniversary of that. So that's wonderful, I guess. And she also says, thank you for the great work and service to your community. But she's curious, how did you know about Upper Iowa? Was it the program that the state of Minnesota or Owatonna County funded, and thus you didn't need to consider other programs? Or if not, what other programs did you consider, and how did you decide on Upper Iowa's online program?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. So I will never forget this. This feels like it's been forever ago after the year we've had, but I was at an exercise in the cities back in 2000, at the end of 2012, the start of 2013. And a friend of mine from Mayo Clinic in Rochester, his daughter had just enrolled at Upper Iowa, and he was gushing about it. And she was an in-person student. She had gone to Fayette, and he was thrilled. She was really going to be their first college graduate when she made it. And so we were chit-chatting about it, and it never really hit my radar until that night. I'm flipping through one of the EMS magazines. I think it was EMS World or GEMS or something. I was flipping through there, and I saw Upper Iowa had an ad, and they're out. Well, I know these guys. I just heard all about this, And at the time, they were really promoting the emergency and disaster management for a bachelor's in emergency and disaster management, which obviously that was the field I was working in. And honestly, getting a bachelor's degree had been a lifelong dream of mine. I'd gotten an associate's in business because you can't go wrong with a business degree. But when you end up in EMS, I just wanted to know more about what I was doing. I wanted that confidence. I really did. So I applied in early 2013. I took my first class started that class in April. And in May of 2015, I graduated along with Todd Emanuel's daughter, the guy that was so proud of his daughter. And that was a banner day. That was a great question. That
is great. Yes. And it's wonderful. It just goes to show that the power of connection and networking, and how it takes us all over the place and can give us those little pushes that we need to continue on with our goals and succeed. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Roxanne, for that question. So now I think we're going to gear back down to EMS a little bit here. And I just have a question. How has EMS changed through the pandemic for your rural areas in terms of some of the positives that you are seeing now?
Sure. That's a great question. And looking back on our 1 year, on our COVID huddle's first birthday, if you will, things have changed a lot. Our rural providers are not nearly afraid of technology as they were a year ago. There is an ease of communication that we didn't have in January of 2020. I have a lot of cell phone numbers, but more importantly, most everybody that I would need to get in touch with on our response services has an email, and they check it on a daily basis, which is a pretty big deal. The portability of that communication. So again, a lot of these services were very fixated in what they've done for 30, 40, 50 years. In the past, prior to March of 2020, if a service wanted to see their medical director, they would want their medical director to come out to physically be there, and that puts a strain on a doctor's time for sure. Docs have a lot on their plate, but a doc now can zoom into their meetings, and talk to them face to face, and gets that same interaction. And it's certainly, not to take away from just being with somebody in a room, but you can get that interaction. You can get that input from the the person that really drives your response or approves of that response. And I think I'm really a strong believer that all of this has made us more respectful of time. Again, we even with full-time or with part-time EMS providers, they spend a lot of time doing other things. And in the past, we would want to have a meeting or we would want to have a training, and we might make that person drive 2 hours for a 1 hour training and then drive 2 hours back. And that's 5 hours, 5 hours shot for some training. Whereas now we can put training in their laps on demand. We still come out. We can whittle down the important part of training, the part of training that makes them confident in their abilities, and that's that hands-on portion. They don't have to work all day and come to a meeting night and sit through 3 hours of training and hands-on and tired, and they want to do other things. We can come on their time, make their appointment, come out and get that confidence. And I am really a strong believer that's been a boon to our EMS response. The speed in which we can address challenges. Again, with the fire hose, we made it through the fire hose. We got good information out when there was more information than we could shake a stick at. We got it out to the masses, and we can do that again. We built that structure now where we can do that. And so if something now changes with COVID, or with COVID response, we can have that vetted through our medical director into the field inside of 24 hours, if need be. And ultimately, we brought 30 plus responding services, 70 responding services into the 21st century, which is it's a good thing for these folks. It really is. It does open their horizons. And I don't think so. I know it has had a direct impact on their development as providers, be it fire, EMS, or law enforcement. It has had a very direct impact on them, and it really has kind of opened a new world. And I for one, cannot wait until maybe we can get together once a year and have a cookout, have an in-person meeting. I do think there's some true value in face-to-face. But if I'm trying to help a provider who volunteers their time after if they work overnights and they volunteer during the day or vice versa, I want to be respectful. I want to give them the same opportunities anybody else in this industry has. And this has been the absolute best way to do that.
That's great. One of the things that our office focuses on is career readiness. And it's kind of a hot topic in career services and in higher ed in general, with making sure that our graduates are ready to take that next step after they leave Upper Iowa. And so with that, our national organization has developed 8 career readiness competencies. And I know you and I have kind of talked about those before in our discussions over the last few months. Looking at those competencies, what competency do you feel is most important for new hires and new college grads, whether it's in emergency management or any type of program? What do you feel is one of the most important competencies to help one excel in their career goals?
Well, that's a great question, Annie. I think personally, after the year that we've had and the amount of change that we had to make sure occurred effectively and the number of people we brought together, leadership and professionalism, along with a work ethic, I think is absolutely golden. And really kind of breaking that down, with leadership, I mean, you're really looking, I really kind of boil that into 3 things, so kind of a self-awareness that I know what I do really well, but I also know what I don't do so well. And I can communicate to somebody to kind of help fill that need, which would bring, the second part of that is communication. I have to be able to talk horizontally to somebody to help me out, but I need to communicate vertically as well. I have to talk to the people that I answer to, and the people that I need help from out there, the people that I support, I've got to make sure that's an open and that's open and two-way all the time. And then learning, just to always be in learning mode. If the minute I stop learning, that's probably going to be game over. And that really does, I think that kind of those three, if that makes sense, really develops it develops integrity, it develops honesty, and it really kind of promotes discipline within yourself, which I think speaks directly to the work ethic, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So then going off of that, how would you encourage others to help improve those skills that you talk about so that they can continue to ensure that they are competent in some of those things that we're trying to help them out with when they graduate? Sure.
This answer is going to sound super easy, but it is the last thing in the world for me. You have to talk. You have to communicate. You have to communicate to people to your stakeholders, whoever, people that rely on you to accomplish something. Talk to them. Make sure you make them feel valued. Even if you disagree, it's okay to disagree with people. It absolutely is. But find out where they want to be. What do they expect? What can they help you with? Communication is just huge. And one of the things in EMS that we've seen for many years is we have these services that would silo up. They're in a town off on their own and they're going to do things their own way. And we had to tear those walls down. We had to break those silos down this last year. And it's an eye opener for folks when they listen and they get people that want to help. Everybody is really pulling in the same direction. And that's a wonderful feeling. So absolutely talk it out, communicate with these people, let them know who you are and what the mission is.
Wonderful. Any final pieces of advice that you would give to our URU students, our alums, the university community, as we wrap things up tonight?
Sure. I thought a little bit about this, and I really wanted to be I really wanted to, kind of give something worth holding on to. And it really, there's really two things here. So, I think it was Benjamin Franklin would talk about, or he had a saying where if you tell me something and I'll forget it, or if you teach me, I will remember, I'll tend to remember it. But if you involve me, I learn. That speaks directly to kind of what we had to do with these folks. The other thing I really wanted to impart this, because this is, again, and Annie, you and I have talked about this quite a bit. This has been a long winter. This is 1 year of being locked up for the winter. But I had a public health manager in Blue Earth County that I was speaking with last week, and she made just a wonderful statement. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and this time there's not a train behind it. So we have to stay the course. We are getting there. We will absolutely make it through this, and I truly believe we will be better for it.
I agree. And I think that sounds like a positive note to end our March talk with our alumni speaker through our alumni speaker series. So Mark, I would like to thank you for taking some time out of your evening and sharing a little bit of your story of kind of what you've been dealing with for the last year with the pandemic. And it looks like hopefully brighter days are ahead for all of us. So thank you all for joining us this evening, and we hope you will join us next month when we are joined by another alum as we continue our alumni speaker series. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.